Welcome back to Nothing Happens for a Reason. I am so grateful to be here for the launch of Season 3. I cannot wait for all of you to meet the incredible humans joining me for these conversations over the coming weeks. We're starting off the season with a very special 2-part conversation today. Both Part 1 and Part 2 are available for you right now. But before we dive in, I want to celebrate our return with a giveaway. Over the next 2 weeks, if you head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a rating and write a review, you'll be entered to win. Your reviews are the best way to help this community grow and reach the people who need these conversations the most. Look in the show notes for specific instructions and head over to Instagram to see exactly what you could win. Now, let's begin Part 1 of our Season 3 premiere. This is Nothing Happens for a Reason.
Hi, I'm Staci. I'm 33 years old. So I stumbled upon your Instagram page. My algorithm lined it up and I saw the name Nothing Happens for a Reason. And I just dug a little bit further into the account and listened to some of the episodes. And I really resonated with the idea that when people are dealing with grief, they're often met with statements from people that are intended to be helpful, but actually end up kind of digging the knife in a little bit deeper sometimes. Everything happens for a reason being one of the most prominent ones. I have been in the cancer community for the past 5 years, and within the last year and a half, I received a metastatic diagnosis. So I have heard that phrase so many times, or talked about silver linings and, God has a plan and he only gives his strongest soldiers the toughest battles and all that kind of language. So it was comforting to see that there's a platform out there for people to talk about their grief in a way that is just kind of baseline and meet you where you're at.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful that the algorithm did something good and brought you to me. I really appreciated reading the form that you submitted about your interests, and I think that you have a very unique story and something that could probably help a lot of people. And so even just to get started, would you mind explaining to people what does it mean to have a metastatic diagnosis?
Yeah. So metastatic breast cancer is considered stage 4, which is the latest stage of breast cancer, and it is the only stage that people can die from. So I was originally diagnosed early stage in 2021, and they treat early stage curatively. Which means they kind of throw the whole gamut of treatment at you: surgery, chemo, radiation, maintenance medications, all those kinds of things. And the whole goal is to cure you of your cancer and do as much as possible to prevent it coming back. But sometimes cancer, or all the times, cancer doesn't follow rules and it does come back sometimes, and it ends up in different areas of the body, which is the metastasis. So when I got my metastatic diagnosis, we found on a scan that I had lesions in my lower spine and pelvis, and did a biopsy to confirm that it was the previous breast cancer that came back and traveled through my body and landed on other bones or organs. And so that's what metastatic is.
At this point of your life, what does that mean for you in treatments if it does?
Yeah, so early stagers get treated curatively. Stage 4 metastatic get treated palliatively. So the metastatic diagnosis is a lifelong disease. It has often been equated to a terminal illness because there is a possibility that the disease will progress to a point of no longer surviving it. So the metastatic breast cancer community luckily does have a lot of research that's been done, and there have been a lot of medications to come out that are proven to maintain the disease to be stable at where it's at when it's discovered, or even become no evidence of disease where it kills the cancer cells enough that they're not detectable on scans. But we know since they've traveled that there's always microscopic cells. So treatment for metastatic can it can look completely different for each individual person that's dealing with it. It could be a daily medication, which is what I take. That is a targeted treatment for the kind of cancer that I have. It could be infusions, it could be injections, it could be radiation. And the biggest part about it is that we're on medications for the rest of our lives. And we are on a medication that's working until it stops working. And that's called a line of treatment. And once that line of treatment stops working, you move on to the next line of treatment. So, yeah, it's a lifelong adventure.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine you have learned a ton more than you probably ever thought you would about this, especially at such a young age. Like, you really have had to dive into this.
Yeah. I was 28 when I was first diagnosed, and I knew a little bit about breast cancer because my mom is a survivor. I was very young when she was diagnosed and went through treatment, but as we got older and we discovered through her doctors that our family carries a genetic mutation that leaves us high risk for breast and ovarian cancer, that was where the doors kind of opened for me to start learning about it. Not until my actual diagnosis did I really dive in, and I've said for the last 5 years, the breast cancer world is kind of like learning a whole new language. There's so much terminology and so many, what's the word where they shorten it by letters?
Acronyms?
Acronyms, yeah. So many
Oh my
acronyms and so many
gosh.
different
Yeah.
types. So I dove right into the cancer community, and that has helped me to learn as much as I have. And then metastatic, I call it, you kind of like graduate into the metastatic disease when you get that diagnosis, because that's a whole new realm
Mm.
of terminology and acronyms. So
It's
yeah, a
like
lot of studying.
the master's program of
Yeah,
it. Wow, it's like a
exactly.
whole other layer. Oh my gosh, wow. Do you mind sharing about, like, leading up to the first diagnosis? Like, what did you notice? Are there things that you want our listeners to be like, "Yeah, like, this is what was the first symptom, and this is when I knew I needed to go and get checked in?"
Yeah, absolutely. I I was actually 27 and engaged for about a month when I found out that our family carries these genetic mutations. And at that time, I was given a choice to get testing done to see if I carried them, or I could hold off on the testing. But they told me that regardless of my mutation status, that I would start screening for breast cancer at 10 years prior to my mom's diagnosis age. So she was 39 when she was diagnosed, which means me and my sisters should start getting screened at 29 years old. So I wasn't really in a place mentally where I wanted to know my mutation status. I was 27 and figured I had a year and some months until I was 29 years old, and I was going to start screening regardless. And I'm still so young, so I don't expect this to affect me anytime soon. And so I opted out of the testing. But then a little over a year later, just 2 months shy of my 29th birthday, I was in the shower and I was just doing my routine, soaping up my body, and as I went over my left breast, I felt a hard lump in there, and I just kind of immediately knew that it was something that shouldn't be there, and went through the whole process of getting it checked by a PCP and then referrals for imaging. The thing that we advocate so much for now in the community is self-checking and self-monitoring, because the more you're familiar with your breasts and how they are normally, the quicker you'll be able to see if there are some changes. So I was never I was never advised to do self checks. It was only ever get checked when you're at the gyno. And so I feel like I missed out on an opportunity to know my normal and could have possibly found that lump a little bit sooner before it had grown so much. So definitely being aware of know your normal, what feels right to you. And if you do feel something different or see something different, go and get it checked out because it could be nothing, but it could be something. And the earlier you know, the more treatable it is.
Yeah. I think it's such an important message that, like, unfortunately, I feel like we hear those messaging so often for people who've had lived experiences that have led us to these places, right? I mean, I studied something very similar, different experience, but my mom died of ovarian cancer, and what her brought her into the doctor was just, like, she was having digestive problems because the tumor was, like, sticking to one of her intestines, and it got her into the doctor earlier than ovarian cancer is usually found, but since then, like, she always has been like, "You are the only one that knows your body, like, if something feels off, go get it checked out," to a point where, like, I probably go to the doctor too much, but I'm like, I think that messaging is so important, and it's similar to what you're saying, like, you're the one saying this because you've had this experience of having a cancer diagnosis. My mom has this experience. She had this experience because she had a cancer diagnosis. And then I have other people in my life who've never had these lived experiences and they're just like, it's fine. And I'm like, just go, go to the doctor. It's
I
not fun.
know. It's so fun. And I feel like maybe our generation was raised to fill our schedules and become so busy to feel like we're giving back to the world that going to the doctors is just one more thing. And I need to expend all my energy doing like making sure that I look like I'm a productive member of society.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend the time worrying about myself, but that's where that messaging is so wrong because you can't be a productive member of society if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure we could probably have like a whole other podcast episode, just like how broken our healthcare system is too, because I
Oh
do
my gosh,
realize
yeah.
like that is a reason people also don't seek care because it's not set up for prevention. It's set up for when something is wrong. And I could like get on a soapbox for hours about that. And I'm sure I'm assuming you can as well.
Yeah, 1,000%.
I'm sure you've learned some like very painful lessons as well, being somebody who like needs what I'm guessing is pretty consistent medical care.
Yeah, through the first diagnosis, and I was always one of those people that's like, "I'm not going to the doctor, I don't need to get checked out, I'm fine, nothing's ever gonna happen to me." So, the first diagnosis period, it's like 6 weeks of a whirlwind of appointments and testing and imaging and blood work and phone calls and scheduling and coordinating, and it was like a full-time job. I had to take off 2 weeks of work just so that I could get through all of these appointments that I had to go through, and on top of all of that, just to get the diagnosis and the treatment plan, insurance played a major role of what was going to be pre-approved and pre-authorized, and you need referrals to see specialists, and but your PCP won't give you a referral until you go see them, so there's another appointment on top of it, and that is a certain kind of hell that I would never wish anybody to go through. But it's crazy because being in the metastatic space, I have to go through that every time that there is a change in my
Oh my
status.
gosh.
So getting the metastatic diagnosis itself was that whole process. And then there's progression. You're going through it all over again. And I have had progression twice now. And actually, just this week, I found out that my scan showed some progression, and my cancer, as it moves through my body, it mutates. So that makes it a little bit trickier to find what medication is going to target all of the spots, even though they all have some different receptors or different profiles, if you will. So yeah, the medical side of it it's a full-time job to keep up with.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sounds exhausting also. Like it's like too much on top of, I'm guessing, the emotional, mental weight that all this carries too.
Yeah. Yeah. My therapist will tell you I haven't actually processed any of it emotionally too much. All my therapy sessions have been about like my daily anxieties, my marriage issues, and I've been seeing my one therapist for a little over 3 years now. And she's like, "You realize we've never actually like discussed the cancer, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, we haven't, and we're not going to right now because I'm handling it, and that's where I live with it."
You're like, "I will send you my podcast episode
Yeah,
when it comes out." Okay,
exactly.
so you're about to turn 29, you find a lump, and then what the whirlwind of 6 weeks and diagnoses and all of that, like, what was your life looking like during that time?
Um, so I was engaged. We had just my fiance and I had just put a deposit down on a venue right before I got the diagnosis. It was like, okay, wedding stuff is on the back burner. The first step was getting scheduled for surgery, and my breast surgeon is the first doctor that I saw out of the whole team. And she had brought up the idea of egg freezing and fertility preservation, which I wasn't thinking of because I didn't realize that chemo might affect my fertility. So we were engaged, we were planning on getting married, we planned on having a family. And so, in addition to my cancer appointments, then I had to make IVF appointments. And so it's just kind of juggling all these things and like all these puzzle pieces that I had to piece together in like such a short amount of time. So I started the IVF appointments and I scheduled my surgery for the mastectomy. Then I was going to take like 4 weeks to heal and do a round of IVF to see if we could get some eggs. And we were planning on freezing embryos. And then 4 weeks after that, starting chemo. And then a 4 to 5 week break between chemo and radiation. So it was very much like one thing after the other. And it honestly, that was probably the easiest part looking back because it was like, here's the plan. Here's it all mapped out for the year of what you have to do. And you just kind of put your head down and go, okay, if I get through all these things, I'm gonna come out on the other side and I'm gonna be okay. So it was, yeah, it was really just following all the doctor's orders, whatever they told me to do.
And your fiancé at the time, what was his role throughout all of this?
He suffered from like extreme medical anxiety, like white coat syndrome. So I always say me getting cancer was the worst thing that ever happened to him.
Oh my gosh.
Because-
I just got, like, full body chills and anger at the exact same time.
yeah. And
Okay.
I was very much in like this headspace of like, I gotta let everybody know that I'm okay and I'm gonna be fine. So I did take on this role of like, don't worry, I got this, it's okay. But the day that I had to tell him that I was positive for cancer, like he broke down and we called his family members like each separately. And as soon as they picked up the phone, he started crying and couldn't get the words out. So I had to deliver that news to his parents and brother and sister, like all individually. So everything after that was like he wanted so badly to support me and be that like partner in all of it, so he came to every appointment with me, but at every appointment, he started having, like, physical reactions to being in the doctor's office, to hearing the medical speak, and so the focus would shift from why I'm here to, "Oh my god, is he okay? Is he gonna pass out? What do we need to do right now?" Like, so emotionally, I carried him through the whole thing. I just had to be strong, so that he could have his, like, little moments, But physically, I will say he stepped up 100% to drive me where I needed to go, to take care of me, when I was recovering from surgery and chemo and making sure that I'm eating and staying on my meds. Like, the physical aspect of showing up, he was amazing at, but the emotional one was, that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly I'm having a lot of reactions. I'm just thinking about the just, like, deep pain and loneliness you were experiencing, and then on top of that, having to carry the emotional labor of, like, taking care of him, and I'm over here like, "Who was emotionally taking care of you?" And it sounds like it was you.
Yeah. I dove right into the cancer community right away,
Okay.
though.
Good, yeah.
There's a community, it's called the Breasties, and they
Love that.
are, yeah, it's so cute. They are an all-inclusive nonprofit organization that provides support and resources and education on breast and gynecological cancers for the whole scope of people who might be affected by them. Previvors, if you have a genetic predisposition or family history that leaves you higher risk. Survivors, if you've been diagnosed and going through treatment. Thrivers, if you're stage 4 metastatic, and caregivers as well. So, anybody who's touched by these cancers, this space is available to find support, find connection with people. And I luckily had a couple connections to that community prior to my diagnosis. And so they set me up to reach out to one of the leadership. And I just started going to the virtual Zoom meetings. And that was kind of my space to just be like, "Okay, yeah, this really sucks," and I can't talk about it in front of my friends and family because they're so scared and so sad, so I'm, like, keeping it all together in front of them, but when I'm in this space, I can let my walls down and I can talk about, the heaviness that comes with the diagnosis.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you jumped right into it. Yeah, I will also make sure that that resource is listed in the show notes of this episode as well. So, okay, you found a community, and then what what happened? I know that you shared you had some tough decisions to make.
Yeah, um, so 6 months after I ended active treatment was my wedding date, and the whole time I was in treatment, everybody was calling my wedding the silver lining.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Usually, I'm better at not having strong
No,
reactions.
I appreciate the reaction because I thought I was crazy when people would say that and I'd get pissed off. But looking back, I'm like, no, they were the crazy ones. So
Stacy, I'm so sorry.
yeah,
Ay,
they
ay,
just
ay.
wanted the wedding to be the distraction from the cancer. And I'm just sitting here like, this is never how I imagined planning a wedding.
Yeah,
Like, I'm gaining weight from being on steroids to handle the chemo. I'm losing my hair. My body has been mutilated. Like, I don't feel like a bride. I don't feel like myself. And by the time I ended active treatment and I had like the last 6 months of wedding planning to get done, my hair was just coming in. It's like super short and then you get chemo curls and it looks different than it did before. I still had weight on, and so in my dress fittings I had to have my dress taken out a little bit. I still had tissue expanders in because I couldn't get my implants yet for my reconstruction. So I don't even know, MacGyver with dress tape and breast tape to, like, keep things where they needed to be because my dress was all sheer and, like, low cut, and so I was miserable for the last 6 months planning the wedding, but again, I couldn't, like, show that. I had to have this brave face and, like, excited face, and because I felt like I didn't wanna take away from everybody else's excitement because everyone's like, "Oh my god, you're gonna get married on the beach, and it's gonna be so beautiful after such a long, hard year," and it just, yeah. It fell short. And I cried the whole next day after my wedding because I think partly I was like, thank God it's over, but also like, this isn't what I imagined being a bride would feel like.
So you got
And
married.
I got married. So I got married. It also felt like I chose to get married, but in retrospect, it also felt like there really wasn't any other choice. I mean, this man just stood by my side through the toughest year and a half of our lives together, and I did think that that was gonna be my forever person.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to think that something happened after you got married.
Yeah. Yeah. He ended up having a couple medical issues, like, immediately after our wedding, and I won't speak to what they are because that's
Sure.
his story, but I will say what he was experiencing was not, on the same scale of, like, a cancer diagnosis. So, he was going through something serious that needed medical attention, but it was easily remedied. However, his medical anxiety just didn't allow him to handle it with grace or maturity or optimism in any sense. And so now the roles are flipped that I'm a caretaker and I'm still having to carry the emotional weight of what we're going through, what you're going through as the patient and what we're going through as a couple and partnership. And I just started to become really resentful. And then a year later, he had another similar episode, and his pessimism around it just like plummeted even more. And I was like at my wits' end. I was so resentful of him. I was literally screaming at him in the hospital one day, like, you need to figure out how to deal with this because I can't deal with your misery. And I mean, like suicide ideation type stuff that, like, how do I help you if you're not able to just like talk about what you're feeling instead of going silent? And I just became so resentful and I hated myself for being so angry with him. So I started therapy and that just kind of opened my eyes to I thought I was going to therapy because something was wrong with me, but going to therapy and talking about all my issues, it just opened my eyes to all the problems that there were in my marriage itself. And that kind of took everything on this trajectory of uncovering some secrets and lies and infidelity. And so I'm learning how to voice my opinion, stand up for myself, and set boundaries while also discovering a lot of betrayal and infidelity. And I just kind of broke at that point and didn't know what to do. And that's what started the actual like road to eventually getting divorced, which we are now.
Okay. And through the time that you were just describing around, like, he had a couple medical events, a second medical event, you went to therapy, like, what was going on with your diagnosis at that point?
At this point, I am in survivorship. My original cancer was in my lymph nodes as well as my breast, so I was very high risk for recurrence. My doctor had me on a special medication that was actually manufactured for metastatic patients, but has been through trials for early stage survivors to lower the risk of recurrence. So I was on endocrine therapy. My cancer was hormone positive. So I was on endocrine therapy and in menopause at 29 years old. And then I was also on this second drug. It was called a CDK4/6 inhibitor. And that was a 2-year regimen that I was supposed to be on that drug as well. So I am technically no evidence of disease at this time, and I'm just taking medications that will hopefully lower my risk of the cancer coming back.
So things at that time felt like kind of stabilized. I don't know if that's a fair word for something like
Yeah.
this.
On the cancer side, yes.
Okay.
Totally stable.
Right. Yes. Oh,
In my
sorry. Yes.
marriage, no.
No, no, no. I'm like, I was listening, not stable at home, cancer wise. Okay. Yeah. So things were a little bit more stable, or like you were on a regimen and
Totally manageable.
manageable. That's a good word. Okay. Tell us about the decision to leave the marriage. I know that something that was really poignant in what you wrote to me in your interest form was about how you were choosing to be alone versus like holding on to this relationship, which on the surface, right, sometimes people can be like, well, yeah, if the relationship wasn't healthy or there was infidelity, like, of course you leave. But at least in my experience, personally and professionally as a therapist, like, those are the times it's actually hardest usually for people to leave. And so you made a hard decision that is fairly abnormal from my experience. I mean, like, so amazing, and like not the one that a lot of people make, because people want to like cling on to what they know, even if it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a really long time to finally get to a place of saying I wanted a divorce. We got really, really rocky in the start of 2024, and I had kicked him out of the house for a couple weeks, and then he came back in, and I requested separate bedrooms, and we lived in separate bedrooms for about 4 months. And we were actually in couples therapy at that time too. Actually, before all of that, I had been asking my ex to go to therapy for probably 5 years prior to all of this even happening. We always struggled with his inability to be emotional and like tap into feelings and talk about things. So I had always asked him to go to therapy, and he had always told me, absolutely not, never going to happen. Until I found some stuff that absolutely warranted me walking away. And so that was motivation for him to go to start his own therapy, but also start couples therapy. So we were in separate bedrooms going through couples therapy, trying to figure out how we were going to make this work. And after about 4 months, I went to a retreat with the Breasties. It's called Camp Breastie. It's this 4-day summit every year. And we literally go to like a kids' camp, and we do like all camping activities. It's so fun. There's a big dance party. It's called Breastival, and people like go all out like it's Coachella. And it's the most amazing weekend of the year.
Where is it held?
So they just it moved around for a few years, but
Okay.
now they have a home base in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, in
Okay.
like the Scranton area, like the Poconos.
Cool.
And people come from all over the country. They come from other countries, and it's 500 people on this campus that you're just getting to connect with. Like, you would never ever run into these people anywhere else in the world, but like here we all are, and we're showing up for each other, and we're being our most like vulnerable selves with complete strangers. And that year was my second year going to camp. The first year kinda opened my eyes to be like, "Oh, like, I've met some really awesome people here, and I feel like I've connected with them in a way that I haven't been able to connect with people at home." And that also kinda kickstarted my journey of, like, am I really happy, or am I putting on a face? And so by the time year 2 came, and I had gone through all of these difficult times within my marriage, I showed up to camp and I was a shell of myself. I didn't know which way was up, but I was in this cabin leader role where I was kind of a guide for newcomers, and just kind of like that lighthouse for the girls that were in my cabin. And they really responded well to the space that I created in that cabin, and so we formed this really great bond. But then I went to a panel on intimacy, and it was supposed to be platonic intimacy, so I thought I'd be okay in there, but it definitely took a turn and went to physical intimacy, and I, like, broke
Oh.
down, like, crying in the dirt, like, I was a mess.
Oh, man.
But still throughout that weekend, I
Mm.
like, people showed up for me. I had 2 people come and sit in the dirt with me and cry with me and just tell me, like, you are enough. Like, this is okay that this is where you're at, and like, here's where you can go to get support while you're here. And I just continue to make these connections with people even when I felt like so hollow. It felt like they saw me for where I was at that time. Um,
Wow.
and it really made me not want to go home. So when I went home, I asked for a separation. And I said I wasn't over everything that had happened. I didn't feel like we were making progress. And so I wanted to separate. And he told me, well, I moved out the first time. So if you want a separation, you're going to be the one to leave this time. So I did. I packed up my bags and I had a friend who let me sleep on her futon for 2 months. And I did that. I moved out and I broke out in hives like 3 different times
Oh my
because
gosh.
I think my nervous system was just, like, re-regulating because I was
Yeah.
finally feeling like I was in a safe space to, like, breathe a little bit. Um, and then we had eventually come to a place where I thought he was being more open and more vulnerable, and we were connecting deeper, and we gave it another go. I moved back into the house, and then 2 months later, I got my metastatic diagnosis. And I had always said to one of my friends while I was living out of the house, I said, if I ever get cancer again, I'm going to have to get divorced because I can't go through that again. And
I think
so
that's gonna be the title of this episode, by the way.
yeah.
Such a
Yeah.
good quote. Okay.
The universe, they said, "Let me see you follow through on that."
Challenge
And
accepted.
yeah, challenge
Mm,
accepted, and it was a challenge. It
mm.
was still another, like, 6 months of, like, "Oh, am I gonna make this work with him?" Like, because now I'm re-diagnosed, and this is a lifelong disease, and, like, do I wanna be out on my own while I'm navigating this? But over that time, I mean, I also came to realize, like, I having children just doesn't feel right for my story at this point in time and for the near future. And he was a little bit older than me. He had wanted kids all along. Like, he wanted to be a dad yesterday. And I just felt like that was something I wasn't able to deliver on anymore. And our futures just no longer aligned. And he didn't want to hear that. He never would have asked for a divorce. He never would have left, like, anything like that. He was very much like, "We're married. I chose you. You're my person. You're my soulmate. There's no one else out there for me. I need you. We have to make this work. You're just giving up." And my perspective was, we had a future that we planned together, and all of these things have taken place that have changed that trajectory. And so that future is no longer realistic for me. It is for you being able to find somebody and build a family with somebody who doesn't have it medically induced menopause, who doesn't have active cancer growing in their body. There's so many factors that come into becoming a parent when you're battling a diagnosis like this, that for me, it's like it's just not feasible. But he really didn't want to hear that. He just felt like I changed my mind on him, and that if I really wanted that future with him, we could make it work. So I ended up having to make the hard decision for both of us
How long ago was this?
a year ago that I finally asked for the divorce. So all in all, it was probably it's probably about a year and a half of me going back and forth in my own head, and then having the instances where we were going through therapy and trying to work on it together, and then the last, like, 4 or 5 months where I was like, "No, I know my choice, and I just have to figure out how to tell him and make that move."
So where are you at today with it?
So I moved out in July of last year and into my own apartment for the first time in my entire life. I'm living on my own and I absolutely love it. I was a wreck for about 6 months because I was like, I fought so hard to come to the decision and get out of the marriage and get out of the house. And Now I am in like, I'm just distraught, like I'm just miserable. And that was really hard for the first like 6 months. So I upped my therapy. I got a second therapist. So now I have talk therapy and trauma therapy. But it's been really healing to have my own space where I can just cry and I can just let myself feel all of the feelings that I always felt like I had to hold in because I couldn't let anybody see me break down. I've been able to do that now, and this is my safe space. Like, I don't even want people over here. This is mine alone. I rescued a dog. He feels the same way. He barks anytime somebody tries
Oh,
to come into the house. Kato.
Kato?
Kato, yeah. He came with the name.
Yep.
So I call
Cute.
him my little Kato potato.
Oh. I'm a big fan of dogs healing us, so I think it's
Yeah,
such a good thing.
I I had a dog with my ex, my first fur baby, and he kept the dog, and it wasn't a fight that I was willing to have as much as I would have loved to have him. I knew my dog would be much happier with my ex, so I did not fight on that. But that was honestly a lot of my crying was missing the dog, maybe more than the marriage itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that unconditional love that I'm sure that dog gave you that your ex struggled to give you, right? Like, I know humans or dogs are
Yeah,
different things, but like the love we feel from our pets sometimes like does feel safer than humans.
1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so curious about like sitting here today, right now. And I know you've used the word a few times, you use it in your like an intake. Do you often use the word terminal? Is it the word you really connect with? And what does that mean for like how you live your life every day? Thank you for listening to the first half of this conversation. If you're ready to keep going, part 2 is waiting for you. But before you go, make sure you're staying connected with us beyond the episodes. You can sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Instagram, and join the waitlist for the Echo Registry if you're tired of connecting through screens and craving for the tactile support of being a pen pal with another grieving human. Also, don't forget to grab your copy of my free ebook on the website. Let me know if you need anything, and other things to stop saying. A guide to showing up when life falls apart. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It helps more than you know. Now, head over to part 2 to listen to the rest of my conversation with Staci.